Hey there. Before we dive into it, I want to know where and when are you watching this? Drop your answers in the comments below and join our community. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a spine-tingling moment. Now, get comfy, turn off the lights. Let's begin. I'll never forget that night on the back roads of Pennsylvania. A narrow stretch of cracked asphalt swallowed by trees. The kind of road that makes you question if you've already passed the same turn a dozen times without realizing it. My headlights cut a thin line through the dark, but out there, light didn't travel far. The forest just seemed to absorb it. The sky was moonless that night, a black sheet pressing down on the world. No stars, no distant glow from towns, just an endless curtain of dark, thick enough that it almost felt alive. The steady hum of my rig filled the cab, blending with the faint rattle of loose chains in the back. I'd been driving since sundown, 6, maybe 7 hours straight, running on caffeine, muscle memory, and the dull ache behind my eyes that always came around the 5th cup of truck stop coffee. Long nights never bothered me. I'd spent years behind the wheel, moving freight from one corner of the country to another. I liked the solitude, the rhythm of the road. But that night something felt different. The forest on either side of me seemed too close, pressing in, branches bending toward the road like long arms. Every few seconds a shadow would twitch at the edge of my lights, and I'd catch myself tightening my grip on the steering wheel. I kept telling myself it was just the trees moving with the wind, but the air was dead still. I remember coming around a wide bend, slow curve, maybe 50 miles an hour, when I saw movement up ahead. At first, it was just a shape in the dark. My headlights brushed across it, and I saw a man walking along the shoulder of the highway. A man. Out there, in the middle of nowhere. He had a suitcase dragging beside him, the handle clutched in one hand. He moved slow, steady, like each step cost him effort. For a second, I thought maybe his car had broken down. It wasn't unusual to see stranded travelers at night, though rarely this far out. Still, something about him made my stomach tighten. As I got closer, I noticed the details. His clothes didn't fit the time or place. He wore a long overcoat, dark and heavy-looking, even though it was early autumn. His shoes were worn dress shoes, the kind that click against concrete, not the kind meant for walking miles of gravel shoulder. A hat, too. One of those old fedoras you'd see in black and white photos. I slowed down, easing off the gas. My lights flooded over him, but he didn't react, didn't turn, didn't raise a hand for help. He just kept walking, eyes locked on the pavement in front of him, as if counting every crack in the road. I gave a short honk, a friendly one. Nothing. I leaned on it a little longer this time, expecting at least a flinch, a glance over the shoulder. But he didn't even twitch, just kept walking. A chill crept up the back of my neck. Something about that blank indifference hit me harder than fear. It was like I didn't exist to him at all. I rolled down the window halfway, about to call out, but the words caught in my throat. The sound of the truck engine filled the space between us, and for a few seconds, it felt like the entire world had narrowed down to the rhythmic thud of his suitcase brushing the ground with each dragging step. I drove past him slowly. My eyes flicked to the side mirror, and I saw him fade into the distance, still walking, same pace, same direction. His head never moved. He never looked up. Eventually, he disappeared from sight, swallowed whole by the darkness behind me. That's when I realized I'd been holding my breath. I let out a long exhale and told myself it was nothing, just some drifter, maybe deaf or deep in thought. But the feeling lingered, that strange, wrong stillness in him. For the next 20 miles, I couldn't shake the unease. My hands kept finding the steering wheel tighter than they should have been, my eyes darting to the mirrors every few minutes. Each time I checked, I half expected to see that figure again, walking toward me through the black. When I finally reached a rest stop, I pulled over and sat there in the idling cab for a while. The silence was thick, the kind that fills your ears and makes every small sound feel too loud. I told myself again it was just a man, just a late-night traveler. But the longer I sat there, the less I believed it. Something about him didn't belong to the world I knew, and so I kept it to myself. For 2 months, I didn't mention it, not to dispatch, not to the other drivers I knew, not even to my wife. I tried to file it away as fatigue, a trick of my tired brain, but it stuck with me, like a song you can't get out of your head, playing over and over. I'd wake up at night in my sleeper cab, half convinced I heard soft footsteps outside, the crunch of gravel, the drag of something heavy being pulled. I'd sit up, heart pounding, listening, and then nothing, just silence again, the kind that feels like it's watching you. Weeks passed. Routes changed. I tried to forget. It wasn't until one foggy morning near Weatherly, Pennsylvania, that I finally spoke about it. I was sitting at a truck stop diner, the kind with peeling paint and the smell of burnt coffee baked into the walls. An old radio played quietly in the corner. I was stirring my cup when another driver, older guy, grizzled beard, deep lines in his face, sat down across from me. He started talking about haunted routes, ghost lights, and strange things truckers see on long drives. I tried to ignore it, but the words, "walking the road at night," made my stomach twist. Before I could stop myself, I said, "I saw someone once." A man walking the highway, suitcase in hand. The old driver froze mid-chew. He looked up slowly, eyes narrowing. "You saw him," he said, voice low. "Who?" I asked. "The walker?" He leaned back, studying me for a long moment. "They say he's been around for decades. Always on that same stretch of road. Always alone. Some say he froze to death during the blizzard of '62. Others think he's still trying to make it home." I just sat there, staring at my coffee, my reflection warped in the dark surface. Before he left, the old man put a few bills on the counter, then looked back at me. "If you ever see him again," he said, "don't stop. Just keep driving." I didn't answer, didn't need to. The look in his eyes told me he wasn't joking. That night, back on the road, I couldn't get his words out of my head. The walker. I want to tell you a story my father shared with me only once in his entire lifetime. It's about an incident that happened when he was a young truck driver in East Africa, in the late 80s before hell broke out in Rwanda. He never wished to speak about it. For years, he would change the topic whenever I brought it up. And even when he did finally tell me the entire story, I could tell that a piece of him still lingered there, in the cage. My father used to have to drive far distances across Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda in order to make delivery runs for a trucking firm. He used to say Rwanda was one of the most beautiful places he'd ever traveled to: green rolling hills, serene villages, nice people. But things changed over time. He started noticing more soldiers on the roads, checkpoints, and people were afraid even when they weren't saying a word. He did not know much about the tension between the Hutus and the Tutsis at the time. It was just another delivery to him, another route to take. One night, he was driving to Kigali in a half-full truck, passing through small, rural villages under a starless night sky. The air clung heavy, thick. He said even the crickets had stopped chirping. That's when he saw the flashing lights in front of him, a roadblock. He slowed down, rolled down the window, and reached for his travel papers. Before he could even utter a word, a number of soldiers had surrounded the truck. They pointed their guns at him and swore in Kinyarwanda, which he did not understand. He attempted to explain, in Swahili, that he was just a Kenyan driver, but they paid no attention to him. A man flung open the door and dragged him out. They kept saying one word over and over again, Tutsi. He did not even know what it was at first. Then he realized they believed he was one of them. They took his ID, but it seemed to make no difference. He was herded towards a group of prisoners huddled behind a chain-link fence. The cage was small, maybe 10 feet wide, and packed with terrified men. There were some who were crying quietly. There were others who were praying. There was the smell of terror and sweat in the air. My dad explained to me the soldiers arrived every couple of hours, always nighttime, open the gate, shout out some names, and take people away. No one ever returned. At first, he thought they were being resettled somewhere else. But the cries of the black fields on the other side of the trees were a warning to him that this was not true. He was in shock on the first night. The second night, he could not sleep. The third night, he just waited numb, listening to the footsteps, the yelling, and the silence that followed always. At this point, his voice had been removed from trying to get himself understood. He tried to speak Swahili, English, even bits of French he had learned in school. Nobody listened. He was a stranger in a country where one could be murdered for being mistaken for the wrong sort of person. He told the worst of it wasn't the fear of death, it was seeing all the people around him lose hope. You could tell by looking at their eyes. That calm resignation. That creeping loss of hope. On the fourth day, the air was chilly. A soldier walked by, opening the gate, and tossed in a few water bottles. That's when my dad noticed this guy sitting near the corner of the cage, older, thin, but with a serene face. The man looked at him for a second, then mumbled something quietly. In Swahili. My dad tensed up. He hadn't heard that language in days. The man asked where he was from, and my father quickly told him Kenya. A truck driver, just passing through, not Rwandan. He didn't know what was happening. He showed him his ID, trembling. The man nodded slowly, then stood up and moved forward and said he would try to help. He didn't say how. He just got up and went outside to speak to the soldiers across the fence. For the whole hour, my father stood waiting, his heart pounding, for the man to be beaten or shot. But the guards walked up to the cage, opened the door, and motioned to my father to exit. He was hesitant at first. He assumed it was a trick. But the guard stuck his ID in his chest and said one word in Swahili, "Go." They returned his truck keys. That's all. No reply, no queries. He climbed into his truck, shaking hands with the last of the passengers, and started the motor. The roar of it almost made him cry. He had no idea which way to go. He just kept on driving until he saw the signs for the border of Uganda. He drove through the night, wide-eyed, headlights cutting through the fog. Every bump in the road made him start. Every shadow appeared to come to life. When he did manage to get over the border, he steered into the small roadside diner just beyond and just sat there. He said he didn't even remember turning off the engine. He just sat in the car, staring out the window, until dawn. He said not a word about it for 2 months. Not to his colleagues, not to his wife, not to his own brother. He tried to lay it to rest. But if he heard a radio program about Rwanda, he'd shut up. And if you asked him what happened that week, he'd say, "Some roads you never drive again." Years afterward, when he finally told me this tale, he said he still recalls the man who had helped him, the Swahili-speaking man. He never knew his name. He never saw him again. But he blamed his existence on this stranger. And sometimes, during nights when my father traveled alone, he told me that he could still sense that same quiet, that same stifling, unnatural silence he had experienced at the checkpoint. as if the specters of that cage still lurked somewhere out on the road, waiting for him to leave. He survived because one man took a risk to help a stranger. But to this day, my father says he doesn't know why they let him go. Was it mercy or a mistake? If you were in his place, would you have turned back to find that man? Or would you just keep driving and never look back? That night still gives me chills whenever I think about it. I was hauling a valuable tractor part across North Dakota, cutting through the endless plains on my way to Montana. The landscape out there is a double-edged sword, beautiful and wide open during the day. But once the sun goes down, that same openness turns eerie. You feel like the last person left on Earth. By around 2 in the morning, I'd been driving for hours on those long, straight roads that never seemed to end. The hum of the engine, the rhythm of the tires against the asphalt, it all started to blur together. Highway hypnosis crept in quietly. My mind began to drift, and I was on autopilot, just guiding the wheel while my thoughts floated somewhere else. Then, out of nowhere, something ahead snapped me back to full awareness. About half a mile in front of me, I saw a long, dark shape stretched across my lane. My first thought was that it was debris, maybe a blown tire or a chunk of something that fell off a truck. But as I got closer, my stomach dropped. It wasn't debris. It was 2 people lying head to toe across the entire lane. My instincts took over. I swerved hard into the opposite lane and hit the brakes. The truck screeched, and I came within a few feet of them before stopping completely. My heart was pounding like a hammer in my chest. I sat there, gripping the wheel, trying to process what I was seeing. The 2 figures didn't move, not a twitch, just lying there. At first, I thought maybe they were hurt, passed out, or in trouble. But something about it didn't sit right. Who the hell lies down in the middle of a highway at 2 in the morning? I was just about to throw the truck in reverse and check on them when a story I'd once heard from an old-timer came back to me. He'd warned me about a kind of road ambush that sometimes happened out here in the middle of nowhere. The setup was simple. Someone would lie in the road pretending to need help, and when a driver stopped, others would rush out from the dark, beat them, rob them, sometimes even take the truck. That memory froze me. Suddenly, the whole scene made sense in a way I didn't want it to. My gut screamed at me not to get out. I trusted it. Instead of reversing, I shifted back into gear and started moving forward slowly, keeping my eyes locked on them the whole time. As soon as they realized I wasn't stopping, both of them got up, just stood right up like nothing was wrong, and started walking toward the side of the road. That confirmed it for me. I didn't stick around to see what they'd do next. Once I had a safe distance, I grabbed my phone and called the police. I gave them my exact location, the time, and described what I'd seen. I hoped they'd send someone, but I also knew how it worked out there. It could take hours before anyone showed up, and by then, those 2 would probably be long gone. The rest of that drive to Montana felt different. I couldn't shake the thought of what could have happened if I'd stopped. Maybe I'd be the one lying on that cold asphalt. Maybe my truck would have vanished into the night. Ever since that night, I've been a lot more cautious during my late runs. I trust my instincts more than ever. Out on those empty highways, anything can happen, and sometimes it's not the road itself that's dangerous, but what's waiting on it.